What's happening, Fish and Friends? Tonight we're going to be looking at the Bass Pro Shop Pro Qualifier 2 bait casting reel. This is the special edition blue and silver reel that they released last year, right around this time. They had them on sale for $49.99 at Bass Pro Shops. So tonight I'll be doing a full review on this reel after using it for a full year. I'll start off by giving you an up-close look at this reel and discussing all the crazy and fun and amazing features on it. I'll go over the three main categories that I consider when I'm buying a reel: the comfort and feel, the castability and how easy it is to adjust, and the fit, finish, durability, kind of fishability, how it feels after you get it out and actually use it. I'll finish up by going over what I feel to be the pros and cons of this reel, so hopefully giving you the information you need in case you were looking at this and potentially wanting to buy it. So let's start by taking a closer look at all the features. Okay, starting with the features. Well, how about the speed? The one I got is, you can see it there, 6.8 to 1 speed. This also comes in a 7.5 to 1. And then the other Pro Qualifier 2, that one that's kind of gold and gray, not the special edition one, I think that one also comes in a 5.6 to 1. A lot of new folks ask me what's a good speed to get. Man, the 6.8 or a low 7 to me is one of the best all-around speed reels you can get. This one brings in 28 inches per turn, but that's always going to vary depending on the size of the spool. So you might also see one that's a 7.2 to 1 or something like that, but it only brings in 28 inches. You have to remember the size of that spool is going to determine how much line it's actually going to bring in. There's an inside look at that spool. It is all blue on the sides there. Pretty normal, kind of standard size spool, 120, 12-pound line. Getting it back together is pretty easy as well. Click that in. Just make sure that clicks. That's one thing I noticed is you have to make sure that pushes down and actually clicks in. So if you leave it here and just leave it like that, that's not clicked and you'll see that it moves. So when you push it down, that looks like it's put together, but you have to give it a little extra and make sure that is clicked in. So that was one thing I noticed. I almost lost it a couple times doing that. So make sure you put your equipment back together properly. This happens to have a 6+1 bearing system, so 6 bearings plus your 1 anti-reverse in there. Nothing too crazy on the drag. This only totes a 10-pound drag power. I didn't have any problems with that, and I know also people like to know the drag does click, and that is an aluminum star drag on there. Not the lightest reel. This one comes in at 7.3 ounces. I know a lot of the companies, it seems like they're trying to get under that 7-ounce mark, but I still believe the low 7s is pretty usable. I know some people say, man, that seems heavy, but if you've thrown a musky reel all day, this seems like a feather. Pretty standard spool on it as well. This holds 120 yards of 12-pound monofilament, I assume is the measurement they were going on. That's more than enough for me. I would assume, a regular long cast for me is maybe 50 yards, 60 yards, something like that, depending on your setup, but 100 yards is more than enough line for me. 120, well, I guess that's just extra security. It does have an aluminum frame, and that's something I look for in reels that I want to do certain applications. So the aluminum frame, but it does have graphite side plates, both the removable and the handle side plate, both graphite. Now, I did tell about the star, but the spool tension does not click. So it has a click here on the drag, no click on the spool tension cast control. It does have the lube port that a lot of reels are doing these days, and the brakes, well, they're pretty easy. So there's a little knob here, put your finger in there, grab that, turn this up, and that comes off pretty darn easy. Now you can see inside this does have the dual braking system. So on the outside, you turn the dial up for more brakes. You can see that's pretty high for me. And inside, you turn these on. So when it's moving like this, you can barely see here. See how I can move that with the spring? That means it's on. So this has a total of 6 centrifugal brakes inside. So you can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 on, and these 2 that are stuck right here. See how that's not moving, those are off. So I have 4 on, 2 off, and the outside brakes are pretty high on. You can see there it's about 8.5. That's something we'll talk about more, but that's a quick overview of the reel. It does have an aluminum handle on it. The knobs are kind of a rubbery, not my favorite, kind of slick. We'll kind of go over all this more, but pretty standard handle there, nothing too crazy or special. Aesthetically, it's pretty nice. Just a silver, kind of a matte gray up top and blue accents. I don't mind that at all. Generally, the aesthetics, how the reel looks, isn't something that's hugely important to me. But this one is pretty nice. Nothing too crazy about it. Insane. Overall, a pretty cool looking reel. Now, before I move on, I want to tell you to make sure you go check out Tackle Junkie's video on this as well. He did a full review on this a little while back. I went over the specifications. He usually doesn't do that in his videos, just his style, and that's fine. I'm kind of a tackle nerd, so I like to go over it. But make sure you go check out his video on this. I'll link it at the end because he gives his experience. He's used these for a long time, and he is actually the reason that I bought this. He advised that they were on sale. He advised that he's used these for a long time and he likes them. So make sure you go check that out. Okay, let's move over and talk about the comfort and feel of this reel. How does it feel in hand? In hand, it feels pretty darn good. Pretty average. It's not too small for me. Some of them I feel like if they get too cramped, my hand is like engulfing this thing. So I do like just a little bit of size. So holding it, palming it, it's never a reel that I thought was uncomfortable. So just to kind of show you, this is compared to that Lew's Classic Pro. That's their $59 reel that I've been pretty impressed with. And we'll see here that striking similarity there, huh? Very, very close to being the same. Now, I think some people have said Lew's makes these. Lew's does not make these. They're made through the Johnny Morris Bass Pro Shop deal. Good chance they're made in the same place. I don't know how all that works exactly behind the scenes, but I know there are a few companies over there that make them. But very similar in size, very similar to the Classic Pro. Yes, this is a left-hander. I do use both left and right. But the size of these very similar. Looking at it that way, you can see the width of it very similar. So very similar size on there. Compare that to something like this. That's the old SLX. You can see the SLX is a shorter reel. See the SLX is slightly narrower as well. Kind of hard to tell on here, but this is just a slightly narrower reel. So it is a little bit smaller frame on the SLX. And to me, it's not, not uncomfortable. So if you're thinking, okay, if the SLX feels good, is this going to feel huge? Nah, there's not a huge difference. I think both of them feel good in hand. I think the SLX is maybe a little bit more streamlined. This is kind of a little bit more rounder. You can see when you look at it there, a little bit more width, kind of all around, but still a comfortable reel. One that I haven't had out in some time, I figured I need to get it out because this one I got for $49. I got this Pro Qualifier 2 for $49. Now, regularly, like right now, it's $99, but keep an eye on this because last year I got it at the Bassmaster Classic sale time. They usually have a sale around then, and I got this thing for half off. So keep an eye out because there's a good chance they'll do that again this year. So if you look at this compared to the Pro Max, you can see that the Pro Max is a little bit shorter. When you're looking at them that way side to side, you can also see that the Pro Qualifier 2 is a little bit shorter. So just a tad smaller frame than the Pro Max. The Pro Max does feel a little bit beefier here once you compare it to some of these others, something like the SLX, and you can see that there is a significant height difference here. The SLX is a lot shorter. So, something like this is a little bit more palmable. I feel closer to this as opposed to like the Pro Max does tend to be just a little bit wider. So in case you wanted to see those compared to each other, there we go. Those four compared. I think the Pro Qualifier 2 kind of falls in the middle. It's not real big. It's not tiny small, but overall comfortable to me. Now, one thing I always test when I get a new reel is how smooth is it? And out of the box, it was pretty darn smooth. Still, when I look at it, now this is, I showed you all the brakes are on. Still pretty darn smooth. There's a lot of reels after you use them for a year. You cannot do that. I just had a few times in between when I oiled it. I try to make sure I keep my stuff in tune. Now I do notice that it does have a little bit more of a sound than it started with, but I mean, that's after a full year of use. I didn't baby it. You can see this thing has been beat to heck. I'm not one that gets gear and then super duper babies it and doesn't use it. It's meant to be used, so that's what I'm going to do is use it. So overall, in the category, I don't think it's the smoothest reel out of all of them, but I think there are other reels around this price that are a lot less smooth than this. So again, kind of in the middle of the road, doesn't do any of those exceptionally well, kind of a jack of all trades. It does pretty well in all of them. Now, the one thing that I didn't like about this one when I got it is these handles. They're slick. You can see there my fingers don't stick to it. I am kind of getting to be a little bit more of a fan of the bigger knobs. These win, your thumbs stick to it. I like those a lot. Kind of like the regular Lew's knobs. They're slick. I'm not a big fan of them. It's not like they're uncomfortable or anything. You could fish it like this, and I did. I fished this all year just as is. I never got grips or anything for it, but I noticed when your hands get slippery, so things where you're really getting a good hook set, they do kind of slip off. So that's kind of the only negative about the feel of it, the comfort. And again, these are not uncomfortable. I'm not saying that at all. I just like something with a little bit more bite there, or like a Daiwa type rubber on those. It's grippy rubber. Like when you run your thumb over it, it stops. It kind of grabs it. Okay, so let's move over to the castability and adjustments. I showed you this when I first opened it up. Now, the first time out on the water, I did kind of struggle a little bit to get this dialed in. Now, that's not a big problem for me. I mean, I've used Baitcasters since I was little. Thank you, Pops, for teaching me how to use them. I like being able to use both this and the spinning reels. So, after a little bit, I get these dialed in, not an issue. But the problem is that I think for a beginner, having both of these systems, the external and the internal, can get pretty confusing. I mean, one alone, I know for a beginner can be pretty hard to get dialed in, trying to figure out the outside brakes, plus the spool tension, how tight do you have it, how fast do you want it to fall, when do I turn these up, when do I tighten this, all of it can kind of be a, a flip of the cards. Which one do I do? So for a beginner to have both at this price point, I think it's kind of a double-edged sword because you do get a little bit more tunability. You can do some things that are a little bit more precise. Each brake system will do a little bit more at certain parts of the cast. So in the long run, you do get a little bit of tunability that you wouldn't get with one, but I often think that a Baitcaster with just one solid sort of brake, so for example, the SLX, doesn't have any magnetic brakes. It's only got the centrifugal brakes inside, right? Okay, so you figure those out. The Classic Pro, you can even see there, same type of deal here. Pull it up, very reminiscent of the Pro Qualifier 2, but you take this out and it's just the magnetic brake, so only one brake system to figure out. So having the two, you'd think that you'd have a lot more braking power, but what I found is I had to run 4 of these internal centrifugal brakes on most of the time, and a lot of the times I was turning my external brakes up higher, so I thought that was kind of interesting. I had to have the brakes up a little bit higher than I normally would. Now, once I got them dialed in like this, it wasn't an issue. I could still turn those 2 internal brakes on, and I could even turn this up more. But as a beginner, to me, it's kind of a finite line between adjustability, all the cool features, having 2 systems versus just having one system that's easy to learn and be done with it. If these magnetic external brakes were a little bit stronger and you only had that, I think that might be, a little bit better selling point for folks than having both. Now, again, that's just kind of me throwing stuff at the wall. Some people might open this up and get excited that they have both. Some people might look at that and say, man, all I want is just the one system. I don't want to fart around with having to open this every time I need to adjust it and do this. And that is the thing. Anytime you have to open up a reel and it's not connected, I have dropped them in the water. Luckily, it's been close, not on a boat from the bank, and I can just grab it. But that is one thing I like about something like the SLX. If it is one that you have to get inside, this pops up. So overall, those brakes, a little bit finicky to get set in up front, but once I got them in, it worked fine. I didn't have any issues with it. So maybe just something to think about if you are a beginner and you're not 100% comfortable with that. Maybe checking with someone that does, or if you ever have questions on one of these, you have questions for me, certainly feel free to leave a comment down below. I am happy to answer any questions that you have on setting these up. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, it's got a thumb bar there that has a little rubber deal. It's kind of nice. Okay, the last section, the fit, finish, and durability. Now, I noticed when I first got it, and you can still see that it does pass the spin test, because every Baitcaster that you pick up, you have to pick it up and spin it fast, because that's a true judgment of how the reel's going to be, right? I'm kidding. That's sarcasm. But I'm guilty of it too. The first thing I do when I pick up a reel is that, and it really makes no sense, because just because a reel does this freely doesn't mean it's going to be good. I don't know. But this one, I noticed it was really smooth when I first got it. Little bit more of a sound to it now, and I noticed with some lures when I was using it, it did have a little bit more of a geary-ish, kind of feel. You could feel it in there. It wasn't as smooth as, a smaller, like say, jig that I'm reeling in. Some lures that did have some resistance. I don't remember if it was I think it was a larger spinnerbait, which can often do it. You have a lure that has resistance, you're bringing it in, it can definitely test that reel. So it wasn't as smooth with something like that, but again, for $49, you're going to have pros and cons. You have to remember that when you get a reel in this price range. The good thing is it's held up. I cannot say enough for that. It's held up. Nothing's broke. Everything works. A little bit of lube and grease in between here and there throughout the year, and it has been 100% fine. So as far as fit, finish, durability, everything holding up, for $49, I am very satisfied with that. Nothing's broken. You can tell again. I've run it through the ringer and in and out of my car and stuff on trips. Still feels good. Okay, so in closing, my final thoughts on this. What do I think the pros of the reels are? Well, I'm thinking somebody that's going to buy this, if you can find it on sale in that $49 range, even up to $100, it's going to be somebody that's looking for some more budget type gear. So I think this does do an all around good job of kind of being a jack of all trades. Now, it's not like I pick it up and go, oh, this thing is so light, or oh, it's so small, or oh, it's so smooth, or oh, it casts amazingly far. It's not amazing at any of those things, but the good deal is it's kind of a jack of all trades reel. So I think if you're looking to pick up one that kind of does a little bit of everything, great. I don't think you're going to have any issues here. Like I said, as far as fit and feel, I have had no issues there. It's held up. So all those categories is done pretty darn well. Okay, what are the cons of it? Well, like I said, it does kind of have a little bit of that geary sound. Not as smooth when I first purchased it, but after a full year, it's usually not going to be. I'm suspecting that it's probably a little dry in there, probably needs some grease on that main gearing and such, and you would be surprised what a little TLC does to a reel after it's been used for a full year. The other deal is the handles. I'm personally not a fan of these handles now. I probably would slap some of these wind grips on there. I'm a fan of those. Say what you want about them, but I do like that for situations where I'm setting the hook hard. Something like this where I'm just reeling it in, not as big of a deal, and that's what I used it for, was moving baits. The second con was that castability. Though it might seem nice that it had both brake systems in there, unlike some of the other reels that I've used that have both brake systems, I didn't find it cast amazingly far, and I thought it was a little bit finicky initially at the setup. Now again, once I've got it dialed in, no problems, it's been fine. But that initial kind of setting did take me a little bit more time than a lot of the other reels at this price point. Now the third thing, and this isn't really a con, but it's one thing that I kind of touch on with people when they're asking me what kind of reel should I buy. So this does have the aluminum frame. So if you are looking for, you know, things where you're gonna set the hook harder, Texas rigs, jigs, those sort of things, I always look for an aluminum frame. If you have a reel like this that's all graphite, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. Things where you're going to set the hook harder, you know, if I was running a jig or a frog on this is that $59 new Lose from Reels, that Classic Pro. I'm not going to use it for those sorts of things. Things where I have an all graphite frame and side plates, you know, treble hook baits, perfect thing. Topwater treble hook baits. Things where I'm not going to be yanking into them crazy hard and putting a lot of resistance on those hook set. So that's something to keep in mind too. If you were looking to get something, you know, to use for some Texas rigs and jigs, you know, light stuff, not like 3/4 ounce jigs, you know, punching and stuff like that, I would go to something with an aluminum handle side plate as well. But for this generic use, that's what I've used it for. Weightless stick baits I threw on it, chatter baits, I threw some finesse jigs. It did all those well. So overall, pretty pleased with that. So let's go back over there and get this video closed up. All right, fishing friends, that's going to do it for tonight. I hope you all enjoyed going over this, looking at all the specifications of it, and me giving my pros and cons after using it for a full year. But I need you to all comment below and let me know, have you used the Pro Qualifier? Have you used the standard Pro Qualifier too? It's kind of like a gold and grayish one. Some people I think said like the older version of that one was better than this one. I've never used the older ones. This was the first Pro Qualifier that I've used, so I'm interested to hear what you say. Comment below and let me know. Now tonight's subscribe fishing friend goes to Thomas Palmer. Thomas, thank you very much for always watching and supporting. Hopefully you've got your stuff figured out so you can comment again. I know you had an issue with that, but I still thank you for watching. I know you are still out there doing that. So thank you, and thank everybody else who watches and supports my videos. It really does mean a lot to me, because without all you, I'm nothing. You can't see it, but it's finally not midnight for once. I'm actually going to go edit this and you're going to see it tomorrow. So thank you all for watching, and until next time,